if you're on this planet long enough, you are going to have to be faced with moments where you have to demonstrate resiliency.
Yeah.
And you can actually work on building that muscle wherever it lives inside your brain, but like you can actively work on that before you're faced with it.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the MTNTOUGH Podcast. I am Dustin for host and CEO, and I'm so glad that you are here. We love seeing you dive back into these episodes week after week, and it is our goal to bring you an inspiring guest every single episode that helps you with that mental toughness, that mental fitness, and add some tools to that mindset toolbox so that you can be always ready, so that you can live this abundant life. If you are new to the show, I do want you to know about the exclusive code you can use to access all of our MTNTOUGH training in the app in MTNTOUGH Plus. The code is MTNPOD, MTNPOD, all caps, all one word. That gets you 6 weeks free of training in the MTNTOUGH app. You can start for 6 weeks for free before making a decision to become a subscriber. That's going to unlock all of our physical programming, our mental programming, our spiritual programming, our nutritional programming. Think of it as a Netflix for badass dudes and gals looking to level up their life. Shifting over to today's guest on the show today, we have Ryan Manion. She is CEO of the Travis Manion Foundation. She's an amazing, inspiring public speaker, guest speaker, inspiring audiences all over to live their best life. After losing her brother, First Lieutenant Travis Manion, United States Marine Corps in Iraq in 2007, Ryan also authored a book where she documented the grief that she went through and finding her purpose, and really does a lot for our country's Gold Star family members who have also lost loved ones due to war. An amazing speaker, an amazing woman, and she's going to share her story today as she motivates you to make some physical and mental changes in your life. So stand by for my conversation with Ryan. The lives of people who move the needle of history are ones not defined by what they were able to achieve, but by what they were able to overcome. How long have you had your show?
Since I think 2020. Yeah. So I just recorded my 100th episode
Nice.
a couple weeks ago. Yeah. So
And it's focused on resilience.
yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, like I started trying to at first, a lot of my guests were, I was looking for these like major stories of like overcoming adversity and tragedy. And then as the show continued, I realized like literally everyone has a story, right?
Mhm.
So, and it may not be as obvious as, some others, but so now it's just about like bringing on super interesting guests that have a story to tell, and we kind of weave into like what resiliency looks like in their lives and how they practice it, and do they actually know they're practicing it. And some are more intentional about it than others, but just try to bring that out in each episode and in the people I'm interviewing.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's such a fascinating topic, the resiliency, and it's something that we all need. And I think you can go through a big chunk of your life without really knowing that you're going to need it. Even putting verbiage around, mental toughness and resilience can be new for people that haven't thought of it before. But
Totally.
the longer you're on this planet, the more you realize that we're going to go through some really hard things, and so having these skill sets is quite helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Do you think about themes that have stood out to you with 100 episodes under your belt on your show, themes that have helped people kind of navigate life in a good way?
I think, like collectively, when I talk to people about resilience I always ask people like, what does living a resilient life look like for you? And there's a very kind of constant theme there. They articulate it in different ways, but it's like really at the end of the day, it's this idea of putting one foot in front of the other every
Mm-hmm.
day, right? No matter what you're going through, no matter what the world is throwing at you, waking up every day and making that decision to keep going. And some of the guests verbalize that in a much better way, but that's kind of the overriding theme. And I think that, you know, for me, I think about this idea of like, I don't even know that I ever thought of the word resilience. I couldn't even tell you how it showed up, if it showed up. I didn't ever think about the word resilience before I lost my brother.
Mm.
And I can say, like, in the aftermath, very early stages after losing him, I was not resilient. I didn't choose to be resilient. I probably actively chose not to be resilient, in the first few months. And then, I kind of just had this epiphany of, again, it wasn't my life had to be lived to honor his sacrifice.
Yeah.
And that's really how I started to move forward, and then understanding this idea that we actively make a choice of how we want to show up every day
Mm-hmm.
and what we want to do. Um, and so, when I think about that, one of the things is like drawing that out of people
Mm.
and having them understand that you put it like, sometimes you don't, if you're on this planet long enough, you are going to have to be faced with moments where you have to demonstrate resiliency.
Yeah.
And you can actually work on building that muscle, wherever it lives inside your brain, but like you can actively work on that before you're faced with it,
Mm.
before you're faced with the choice to have to demonstrate it. So
For sure. Yeah, and I love your definition of the themes that you've seen too, because we on the Mountain Tough show, we love digging into this topic, and we get into it a lot more from the verbiage of mental toughness, but it's very closely aligned with resilience. And throughout all of the episodes that we've ever done, usually when people hear mental toughness, they start to think about like a military figure, a sports figure, someone who has done something great in a very difficult moment of time. But it was like 15 episodes again on 15 episodes ago on our show that this gentleman defined this whole new verbiage of mental toughness, which is exactly how you just defined resilience as well. But it's so much more than just one moment of time. It is kind of that person that goes through famine, fatigue, drought over and over and over again, but they just don't quit regardless of the external circumstances. They are able to control their thoughts, actions, and behaviors regardless of kind of what's going on around them. And for some people, for a lot of people, that is not a moment of time. That is a long period of time. Sometimes we might be going through these hard things for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And that is definitely the separator of resilience is, that is difficult to do when it is extended on that time frame of battling through, external circumstances for multiple years is an endeavor for sure.
yeah, and I think this idea of like, you talk about mental toughness, and this idea about mental toughness, I think what scares a lot of people is, you know, you think the idea of being mentally tough means you can't ask for help or you can't turn to others for support. And it's in fact quite the opposite,
Mm.
right? You have to be able, and that was something that was really tough for me. Um, Asking for help when I kind of hit my lowest point, being vulnerable to this idea that I can't do it by myself. I think that demonstrated more for me. That was more mentally tough. That was me demonstrating more mental toughness than just trying to truck through it alone.
Hmm.
Because it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so I had to kind of let my guard down and show other people a side of myself that I wasn't super comfortable in showing. Um, and and be willing to accept help from others, which came, in the form of therapy, support from family and friends. But I hit a real low point, and it wasn't until about 5 years after Travis's death. I was just I was putting one foot in front of the other. I
Hmm.
mean, literally putting one foot in front of the other. The first thing that I did after Travis was killed was I decided to run a marathon because and so I literally every day put one foot in front of the other, and it saved me in a lot of ways
Hmm.
because I had a responsibility that I had made this commitment. I had to follow a plan. So I knew I had to, whatever I didn't accomplish that day, I knew I had to get in my training plan. And
Yeah.
so every morning I got up, I put one foot in front of the other. I finished the marathon. And then from there, I just kind of dove into the next thing, like what was going to keep me busy, what was going to keep me moving forward. What I didn't pay enough attention to is some of my mental health and some of the things that I was dealing with that I was really just pushing aside. So not dealing with, I would say, more than that. And it kind of all hit me all at once.
Hmm.
And I ended up being diagnosed with PTSD, and I hid it for a long time. I didn't share it. Well, I shared it with my dad and my best friend, but they were the only people that knew. And I was actually at a conference in San Diego, and it was a veterans conference in San Diego, and I was speaking. And there was a lot of vulnerability being shown in the room by the veterans that were in there, and they were sharing their stories. And, I was brought in to be the keynote and kind of wrap everything up. And I had, really kind of canned speech that I was going to give
Hmm.
about their resiliency. And it just, I was like, this isn't, I'm not, I kind of tore it up, and I got up there and I'm like, hey, I have to share something with all of you. Like I was diagnosed with PTSD too. And I remember one of my friends was over to the side, and I was close with him. He was a Marine veteran, and he just kind of did like a little bit of a jaw drop,
Oh man.
And I think it was this moment where not so much that I was diagnosed with PTSD, but that he knew kind of that wasn't me that was going to get up and share that. And I felt such an incredible release in that moment, in being able to just be open with my story and stop trying to act like I had everything together and everything figured out.
Hmm.
So, from then on, I realized how healing it's been for me to actually kind of share the struggles that I've been through. I obviously it's very easy to look at my story, and if you see kind of my public persona, it's like, oh gosh, she's killing it, look at it. But like I go through the same shit that everybody else goes through,
Yeah.
and if I'm not talking about that, I'm
Yeah.
not being authentic
Yeah.
to the process.
One of the keys to maximizing your workout is to make sure that you're eating clean and putting the right fuel in your body. Mountain Tough has preached this since the beginning. You're also seeing a shift right now nationally where we're calling out hidden additives, hidden substances in our food. As a hunter, when you process your own meat, you control everything. No additives, no shortcuts, no compromises. Just clean fuel built for peak performance. My family has been processing our own wild game for years using field-tested, hardcore processing equipment from the team over at Meat. Meat offers world-class grinders, stuffers, slicers, everything you need to turn your wild game into clean, high-octane fuel. No gimmicks, just high-quality tools that get the job done, and they're backed by a limited lifetime warranty. Take control of your life. Take control of your health. Click the link in the podcast description below to claim your special offer from Meat. and start fueling the right way today. Everyone's going through it, yeah, regardless of who they are or where they're at. Like we can't put anyone on a pedestal.
Yeah.
I do want to unpack the rock bottom for a little bit here because
Yeah.
I know a little bit about your story, losing Travis in Iraq, and then a few years later losing your mother to cancer, and that kind of led towards this rock bottom season, which came with panic attacks, which were new for you. Before we get to the panic attacks, when you were kind of headed towards rock bottom, did you have any indicators at all that might happen?
So in the course of 5 years, my brother was killed on April 29th, 2007. And then September 21st, 2010, his best friend and college roommate was killed in Afghanistan, who I was very close with as well, and was very much a support person for our family after we lost Travis. So Brendan was killed in Afghanistan in September of 2010. And then April of 2012, my mom died of cancer. And on the same day, my 94-year-old grandmother just didn't wake up. So my mom and my grandmother, her mom, died on the same day.
Wow.
And it was just like all of a sudden these 5 years of loss all kind of hit me. And I processed through that, and again, like, you're very busy. Like when you're dealing with grief in the beginning, there's a lot of people around, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of different events happening, especially with a military loss. A lot of ceremonies, a lot of memorials. It was December of that following year. So my mom and my grandmother died in April. December of that same year, it was Christmas night. And I went to bed and woke up, just thought I was dying. Literally thought I was dying. Like the panic attack I was having, I thought I was having a heart attack. And my husband said, I said, I think I'm dying. I need to go to the ER. And he was like, you're having an anxiety attack. Just calm down. And, he kind of downplayed it, which actually made it better, in some sense. Because I think if he would have played into my hysteria, it would have been way worse.
Yeah.
But he was like, just chill out, go to bed. But what happened from there was debilitating anxiety. Like that panic attack went away. But I woke up every day for about 6 months with debilitating anxiety to the point where I became, and I don't know what the terms are for it, but there's, they've got all these terms, but like I didn't want to leave the house. My office, our headquarters at the Travis Manion Foundation, was like 2 miles down the road. Even driving there was debilitating for me. And I'm a super independent person. And so it scared me so much that this is who I was now. I wouldn't drive at dark, all these different phobias that you hear people having that you're kind of like, how, like I had them all.
They came out of nowhere.
And it was all based off this idea that I didn't want to go anywhere because I didn't want what happened that night on Christmas that was untriggered by anything beknownst to me to happen when I was, in a public place. And so I just was like, I shut down. And there was one day, it was probably about 6 months, and nobody really knew I was dealing with it. I mean, I was popping like Xanax in the car just to get through a day of work, just to go into the office for a day.
Crazy.
I'd have to take a Xanax just to get through the day. And one morning I woke up, and every morning when I woke up, it was like I would open my eyes and just pray not to feel that anxiety. And I was in the shower one morning and I had this thought where it was just like, if this is what life looks like, I don't want it.
Hmm.
Like I'm done. And it scared me so much to have that
That thought.
idea in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thought. And it scared me so much that that was where I turned, and I turned to my dad and I was like, I need help.
Hmm.
And you know, talking about mental health was not something that was like generally practiced in my home. And I don't blame my dad. I think it was a product of like the times too, growing up in the 80s, it just wasn't like a thing back then.
Hmm.
It's not, it was taboo. I also grew up in a military household. My dad was a, colonel in the Marine Corps. Like he's not talking about mental health with you. And in fact, when I would, anytime when I was growing up, if I would talk to my dad about my feelings, right? Like, oh, I'm sad or I'm upset, anything like that, my dad would turn to a physical component that could help me get through it.
Yeah.
And I joke around now, like when I go out and deliver speeches, it would be like, I failed a test. And my dad would be like, go for a run, think about it. And I'd be like, I think my arm's broken. We'll go for a run. And when you come back, if it's still hurting, we'll get it checked out.
Yeah.
So he literally thought that every thing that you were dealing with could be healed by going for a run.
Physical.
And yeah, physically. And again, looking back now where I am today, I understand that my dad definitely knew that there was a very big connection between physical and mental health. So that's the lesson he was trying to teach me. But not everything you're dealing with mentally can be healed by going for a run.
Yeah.
And so for me to have to say to him, like, I need help, was a big step. And so I started going to therapy, and that was, I thought going to therapy was going to be a way for, I just needed her to tell me, like, how do I not feel like this anymore?
Hmm.
I need your help. And in fact, for a while, the only time I felt okay was sitting in that therapist's office because I was able to release everything that I was feeling. But when I would leave, it would go back. And then it would, the number started to change where it was like, well, half the day I could get through. And it was, a few months in where she finally said, we've been talking for a while and, I'm definitely ready to give you a diagnosis. And I remember I was like, wait, I didn't know you were like examining me. I thought I was just like sharing my shit with you,
Just
right?
talking.
And she's like, well, you have a really severe case of PTSD.
Hmm.
And I was so pissed off when she told me that. I left the office. I called Amy, who is my brother's best friend, Brendan's widow. And I called her and I'm like, you'll never believe this. And she knew what I was going through. I'm like, my therapist just diagnosed me with PTSD. Like, what an idiot. And she was like, Ryan, I was diagnosed with PTSD like a year after Brendan died. Like, just, catch up,
Crazy.
And
Yeah.
she minimized it in a way where I was like, okay, I didn't like having a diagnosis. It felt uncomfortable to me. But I had to learn to get rid of the stigma on mental health that I had placed on it because I definitely had a stigma about mental health, be it my upbringing, but like it felt like I was not mentally tough
Hmm.
if I was giving in to like mental health diagnoses.
Yeah.
So that was tough for me.
Especially because you had tried, it sounds like you had tried a little bit of the prescription route at that moment too
Totally.
with the
I
Xanax.
ran I ran a marathon when my brother died. Like I literally was like, "Oh, my dad said if I'm going through something, go for a run." I mean, nothing's worse than this. I guess I'll run a marathon. That'll help,
Yeah.
right? And here's the thing, it did. Like running that marathon did so much for me in so many ways. But what I didn't do was pay attention to some other things that I should have paid attention to at that time.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
was like you can't just run the marathon and ignore all the other shit.
Hmm.
And that's what I did.
Hey guys, there are a lot of trends out there. And one trend that I've personally found in my own life through experience that has been a game changer is cold plunging and cold water therapy. The benefits for me have been off the charts when it comes to two main categories. The physical inflammation reduction from cold plunging every day has been a complete game changer, but my favorite part of cold water therapy has been the mental aspect, the mental clarity, the stress reduction, and most importantly, the ability to build mental toughness every day in a very simple way by just forcing myself to get in that cold water has been a drastic improvement that is easy, fast, and efficient. I've tried countless different ways to access cold water therapy, from the redneck version horse troughs to building my own cold plunge system off Amazon parts and pieces. Every time I've tried that, it has been a disaster until we found Ice Barrel. Ice Barrel is the most advanced barrel design on the market, and they have the most advanced high-tech chiller on the market as well. I've met the CEO, I've worked out with the CEO, we've had them at the lab. They're a great team, American-made manufacturing, and we're proud to announce that you can now access a discount on Ice Barrel products. All you need to do as a podcast listener is use the code MOUNTAINTOUGH. That's going to get you 15% off all Ice Barrels except the chiller. Again, that's MOUNTAINTOUGH, all caps, all one word, on icebarrel.com. Yeah, just head down into the physical without paying attention to everything else. And then when the therapy started to help, I'm imagining it was still an uphill battle from there.
Totally.
Do you feel like it's a lifelong battle?
For me, I don't. I have gotten to a place where I now have a better understanding of mind and body and what that looks like in my life. I don't want to say never, but I feel like I have better control over understanding the signs of if I'm getting to a place that is unhealthy. And I have the tools now that I need to be able to work through that in a different way than I had before. So I do think it's important, today there's times in my life now where I can get so busy with so many things going on that I forget to pay attention to those signs, and I have to kind of like check myself. But I didn't pay attention to those signs for 5 years, like that's never going to happen again. Like that's a long time.
Yeah.
And so I'm better equipped to kind of deal with things in a different way now.
And what are some of those signs for you?
I can forget to pay attention to, and it's so funny. I think about this now, like literally the first thing I do is that if I'm starting to feel, like I'm going down a bad path or I'm not feeling myself. And I think I hope you know what I mean when it's like, when you're not feeling yourself, when you're not paying attention to things that are going on inside of your head. And so the first thing I do is reset with, again, like I reset with my dad's go for a run, but like I make sure that I am on a consistent physical routine.
Movement.
And movement. And that looks different for me now. I'm not going for, I did commit to run the Marine Corps Marathon this year. But running is, now it's lifting weights, it's walking, it's just movement every day. And I can say right now, like it's been about 2 weeks since I've been on a consistent plan. Like I've got in one day here, I'll throw something in here and I feel it.
Mm,
Like I feel my stress levels are high. I'm leaving for a big trip tomorrow. I'm going to be gone, and I keep putting everything aside. And I can feel kind of I'm Italian, so the word's like agita for me, but like I can feel that agita like rising up where it's like you got to get back to the basics here,
mm,
and I keep putting it off like, well, when I get back from this trip, I'll do that. So I look for that. I look for conversation, sometimes I have a tendency to hold a lot of stuff in, and not talk about how I'm feeling with others.
mm-hmm,
And I'm really guarded in my feelings. And so if I bottle a lot of stuff in, I start to feel that. And so it's like, all right, I need that release. I don't do routine therapy anymore. I kind of ebb and flow. Like
mm,
there's times where I'm like, you know what? I think I need to talk to someone. But it's not consistent for me anymore where I'm once a week or once every other week. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that I start to do. And again, I I'm not perfect in the way I do any of them, but I'm deliberate in making sure I'm intentional about looking for the signs, I
mm.
should say.
Yeah. And you have the tools in the toolbox now to kind of, navigate through different situations from movement, which is so critical for a lot of people. I was I was thinking about when you were sharing your story, because I know how important movement is for mental health. With your story, I was thinking, what would have happened without all of that running, through your season if you were physically inactive through that 5 year window? I could imagine a completely different outcome.
Completely different. Yeah. I mean, that honestly, because I wasn't doing anything else to actively work on my mental health, that was the only thing that saved me
Mm,
was jumping from one physical feat to the next, you know?
yeah.
That is what saved me.
Do you think there's with running and with your healing, eh, also related to being a tool? Is there is there some sort of beneficial tool around goals and goal setting in knocking out like intentional goals?
100%. I mean, I I set goals every single day. And I think it's a way for us, again, how we move forward, right? And I think we don't grow without having intentional goal setting as part of our lives. Uh, Before Travis died, I would say I was kind of merely just coasting through life. I was pretty like apathetic to things. In a good way, I was happy, I was fun, I liked to go out, but I never set goals. My brother literally came out of the womb setting goals. Like I can remember goals he was setting when he was 10 years old. And I was like, what, who is this kid? And it was so different and at the time, prior to his death, I didn't really have a need to set goals, but it's naive to think that I could have gone through my whole life just coasting like that. Like
Hmm.
something's going to hit you, right? At some point or another, something's going to hit you and smack you in the face and say, it's time.
Yeah.
And, if we don't make the decision in those moments to grow from those moments, then it's all downhill.
Hmm.
And goal setting has become really super important to me. And I say it to my kids all the time, it's like it's honestly it's how I get my 10-year-old to operate in terms of paying attention to the physical part. Now, he loves to play sports and everything, but if I want him working towards like running a 5K, it's like, well, we're gonna do this.
Hmm.
And this is what we're going to do every single day to get here to be able to accomplish this. And it tastes so much sweeter when, for me, for training for that marathon, I followed a training plan. I had my goal set of what I was going to do. And the beauty in that was when I ran my first marathon and I crossed the finish line, it was awesome. But I wasn't thinking about the 26.2 miles I had just run. I was thinking about the 4.5 months of training that I had put in to get to that moment.
Yeah.
And, the that was like the dirty hard work that felt so good. It was like, this was just the icing on the cake. This was the, hey, let me show you what I can do because I did all of this, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that's where we see, life transformations all the time at Mountain Tough, as well as a lot of people at Mountain Tough are going to sign up because they drew like a Colorado high country elk tag, and they might live out east. They're intimidated about hunting at elevation. They're intimidated about the heavy packs, the heavy pack outs, multiple days. And so them drawing the tag was the catalyst for them to sign up for Mountain Tough. And then they'll train for 4 or 5 months for that hunt. And we just hear over and over again that, of course, the hunt was amazing and the hunt was great because of the backcountry and the outdoors. But over and over again, the actual life transformation happened because of that 4 months of training.
Totally.
Out there every day, moving every day, which they normally wouldn't have been doing it. The journey is everything. I've used a ton of Bluetooth speakers over the years, and they all have never quite had enough output for me to really have an awesome home gym workout on a Bluetooth speaker. But the Turtle Box is in a whole new ball game. They have leveled up this product, so the bass and the output you get out of a Turtle Box is quite amazing. It's funny how we started using them at the lab. We had an awesome sound system at our new lab here in Bozeman. We were using it so much, we actually blew our brand new system out. We went right to the Turtle Boxes, and so we paired two together in the lab, and that was a lot of output for the Mountain Tough team and all of our testing to have phenomenal sound in our gym for a great workout with great music. We know there's a ton of Mountain Toughers training in their basements, in their garages, and I know a lot of you are looking for great sound to play some music in the background to your MGDs. This is a great product for you to check out. Turtle Box is at a whole new level. The bass and the volume you can get out of that box. It's a sweet product. You guys can check them out at turtleboxaudio.com. Use promo code TOUGH for a free Turtlebox hat with the purchase of a Gen 2 speaker. The hat must be added to your cart before entering the promo code TOUGH, TOUGH.
Well, yeah, and I also think to that there's goal setting, right? But there's also this idea of setting goals that scare you.
Mm,
So you could set a goal that is like totally achievable. And that's great, like set those. But I think in order to grow as individuals, we have to set goals and do things that scare us in a big way. I just did, after I ran that first marathon, I crossed the finish line. I'm like, I'm never running a marathon again. Like that sucked. Felt great, but I'm like, who wants to do this? Like marathons, let's be clear, marathons are terrible for your body. Like they're not good for you.
that
Anybody
pavement.
tells you that they are, like your body is broken down beyond repair for months. You have to start all the way from scratch again. But I had gone on we have with the marathon, we're one of the largest charity partners with the Marine Corps Marathon. So we have a team that runs every year for us. So I'm down there every year. And like being down there and just kind of watching it, you're just like, well, this sucks, I want to be in it too.
Yeah,
And I had gotten linked up with Jason McCarthy from Go Ruck.
yeah,
And he met me down in Georgia. We were at an event for TMF. We were hosting a bunch of veterans there for a summit. And he came down and he brought me my first rucksack. This was in like 2018. And he's like, let's go for a ruck. Have you ever rucked before? I'm like, no. And honestly, I was like, seems dumb. You just walk around with a backpack. I don't get it. So he gave me a rucksack. It had nothing in it, not a pound of weight. And we walked around this, we shuffled around this lake. And I actually was like, I know there's no weight in here, but I kind of like the idea that like we were able to actively do this and like talk and, grow and talk to each other. Marathons are very isolating. It's
Yeah,
just you and the road and get it done.
you're alone.
And so, yeah, and he was like, well, that's the beauty in rucking. And, he's talking to me about community and this and that. And I'm like, listen, you're speaking my language. That's what we do at the Travis Manion Foundation. And so he's like, well, why don't we ruck the Marine Corps Marathon together in next year? And I was like, and it's one of those things where, like, in that moment in my head, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to do this. And as soon as I think in my head, I don't want to do something, it's at that moment that I know I have to do it.
You have
So
to
I
do
was like, okay, let's do it. And so I brought my, pretty new rucksack home and I threw a 10-pound plate in it. And I just started shuffling all around Philadelphia. And I was like, okay. And 2019 marathon came, and I was like, why? Why did I ever decide to do this again with, 17 pounds in a
on your
rucksack?
back. Yeah.
It was bad. And it was the most terrible Marine Corps marathon ever. It like torrentially downpoured for like the first half of the marathon, which I thought was horrible, but was even more horrible is when the rain ended, the sun came out, and it was so humid that there was steam like rising from the asphalt.
Oh,
And those last like 3 miles, Jason was next to me, and he was literally like, do you see that sign right there? All we got to do is get to that sign and then you can stop. And he literally like, and then you can stop. And we get to that sign. He's like, you made it. Let's just get to this next sign. And we did that like mind games just to get me through those last 3 miles.
oh
But I'll
man.
tell you what, like doing that and getting through that marathon and being able to say now like, oh yeah, I rucked the Marine Corps marathon with 20 pounds and
Yeah.
still finished like in a pretty decent time in 5 hours. Like I felt pretty good about that.
That's awesome.
So but it's this idea for me that if something scares me, it triggers something inside of me that tells me, okay, that's something you really need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Michael Easter talks about it. He has a
Misogis,
yeah,
Misogis.
yeah,
Yeah, totally.
the Misogi concept is so accurate and so true, and that level of hard can be different for every single
Ever.
person. That level of scariness is different for every person, but that definitely is the magic of, is it slightly outside of your comfort zone where you think you're going to fail? And for some people, that's a 10K. For some people, that's an ultra marathon. That level can be across a wide spectrum. But if you put something on your calendar, they also call it the Spartan effect. If you are, struggling with life, complacency, passivity, just your motivation, your morale, the Spartan effect is registering and swiping your card for something that's scary so that it's on your calendar. And for us, for the physical training, I've seen that change the game so many times where there's an individual that knows they should be working out. They just can't find that motivation to work out. But it really doesn't matter what it is. If they actually register and make payment on some sort of event, some sort of race, that could be, a Go Ruck event, a Spartan race. The magic happens when they register. And so if you register 6 months out, now all of a sudden you're making those gym sessions, you're waking up when the alarm goes off. It is pretty magical how that works.
Yeah, I mean, it's what the Misogi is do something that there's a 50% chance you're going to fail, and that's rule number one, and rule number two is don't die,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so it's like, okay. I actually just referenced the Misogi because I did I don't know if you know Brian Shantosh.
I don't
Um,
know.
Okay, so Brian Shantosh is a Marine, goes by the name of Tosh. He's a Navy Cross recipient, and now he's just a grizzly old man living in Colorado, and he does these hard way challenges.
Okay.
And it's literally like, again, they're basically Masogis. And him and I just did in September, we did 48 hours in he gave me a little land nav exercise to and it was 48 hours in Colorado in the backcountry with a backpack, find our own water. We had a couple pouches of dehydrated food, and let's go. And there was like, and I'm like, what is this? And I'm freaking out the whole time
Yeah.
leading up to it because I was like, last time I was out there in Colorado with him, I got altitude sickness, of which when I told him I had altitude sickness, he told me altitude sickness doesn't exist. I mean, this is who I was dealing with, And so I didn't know how much we were going to be carrying. I didn't know how much we were going to be all of these things. And he intentionally would not share the information with me because I wanted like this detailed plan. And the detailed plan was when I got to his house, we're looking at all these ridge lines and he's like, you see that rock right there? That's where we're going to go to first. And I'm like, what? And then he's like showing me how to grid it out on the, use the grid to figure it out with the compass and the map. And I got us there and, we got to that first rock and then we just kept going for 48 hours. And, the temperature dropped real low and the first night I'm lying there and we're just lying at the bottom of it. We climbed a mountain, we came back down and he's like, oh, we'll take a break. We'll try to get a few hours of sleep. And I mean, the temperature dropped to like, it was like 40 degrees. And I'm like, this is bullshit. And I'm lying there. And all I'm thinking is, why am I doing this? I'm a 44-year-old woman. Why am I lying here in the dirt?
In the middle of Colorado.
Yeah. Like, what am I doing this for? What am I trying to prove to myself? And it was like kind of in that moment, it was like, this is why you're doing it. And the coolest thing is before I left, I like called my kids and my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's 18 and she was like, Mom, I just think it's so cool. Like, where's your mom? Oh, she's like in Colorado in the mountains, just hiking around, and she's like, and I was like, that's why I'm doing it,
Yeah.
But I was terrified leading up to that trip. I had 27 different prescriptions for altitude sickness. And I got there and I'm showing them to Tosh. I'm like, I know you don't believe this doesn't exist, but I'm going to take these. And he was like, okay. And before we left, I pulled them all out of my backpack. And I'm like, I'm not bringing these. And I left them. Yeah. And because I was like, I don't need these. And I didn't get sick.
Yeah.
But it was our last day. And we were walking back and we were on this trail. And, I was trying to find these moments of like, again, what this whole trip meant and what I was experiencing. And like the whole idea was just for me to be led into a place of uncomfortableness, of which he fully succeeded in doing. I mean, he led me out of my comfort zone in so many ways. And it had been pouring. So we were hiking in the rain for a couple hours and I was like, miserable. And then the sun came out and there was this beautiful rainbow and there was this huge field. And we kind of came through these trees and I lifted my head up and there was the biggest elk just like staring us in our face, this huge ass moose. And I went, oh my God, look. And he was like, shut up, because it was like directly in front of us.
Oh man.
And he was like, don't move, and I'm like, I got to get this on film. Like, this is amazing. I mean, I was blown away at the majestic beauty of this huge creature just staring at us.
Hey guys, I did want to interrupt for a quick minute right here and let you know about some supplements I've been taking. I did shy away from supplements for a long time. I was always cautious about what they were made out of, where they were from, and who the team was behind the brands. But over the last couple of years, I've got to meet the team at Mountain Ops from top to bottom, and they are an amazing group of humans. I've got to know the CEO, Trevor Farnes, really well, and he is a mission-focused individual that cares about humans living a better quality of life so that they can have that abundant life. So over the last couple of years, he has helped me add some things that have changed the game for me. One of those things that I've added is creatine from Mountain Ops. It helps me maintain some muscle mass, but also it's a big, big player in cognitive function, one of the most researched supplements out there. Also, I've added reds, greens, and protein, all from Mountain Ops. What I found as a busy professional, always on the run, I do eat a whole foods diet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but on the go, it's hard to get enough vegetables, fruits, and protein. So I've added that from Mountain Ops, and it has significantly changed the game. I can feel it in my performance. I haven't got sick for a long, long time, and I can certainly feel it in my mental clarity as well. The last thing I've added is the Mountain Tough Hydrate product for the backcountry, for hunting season. When I'm in the hills, I do run short on those electrolytes. We even have a Mountain Tough flavor, the Mountain Tough Lemon Lime Hydrate, and that is a game changer for hydration in the backcountry. So I keep it really simple. That is all I've added to my protocol, and it has certainly helped me, and I certainly believe in the team and the culture behind Mountain Ops. They have started an initiative that's been around for a while called Conquer Hunger. Conquer Hunger is giving meals to hungry kids that aren't getting enough food, and they've given out over 6 million meals plus to kids through their Conquer Hunger initiative. So every order that happens at Mountain Ops, a percentage of that order goes to Conquer Hunger. So certainly an incredible company, an incredible culture. As a listener to the show, you do get an exclusive offer to Mountain Ops, so make sure you check that out. The offer is incredible as a first-time purchase at mountainops.com. So build your order if it's your first time. They are offering you a 20% exclusive discount. All you need to do is enter the promo code Mountain Tough, all one word, all caps, for 20% off your first order at mountainops.com.
He was trying to find a way to get us past because apparently we were not in prime position. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not tracking any of that. I'm like, we could just walk by. He's like, yeah, we're just not walking by this thing, you know? But leaving that, like that whole trip, that whole 48 hours, like I walk away just like with that one moment was so beautiful to me to be able to experience that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was again, that was something where for 2 years he kept saying, do a hard weight challenge with me. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do one, you know. And then and here's the best part about it. I said to him, I'll do a hard weight challenge with you, but I don't want anything that I don't want to deal with cold weather and I don't want to deal with altitude because knowing that I'd gotten altitude sickness, because he had all these different ideas of things we could do. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy's like running storage containers, like put him and then another person in a storage container blacked out, treadmill in each of them.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
it's he who runs on the treadmill for the longest in a 24-hour period. And it's this
Brutal.
competition against a person you can't see. So I was
Oh,
like, so I mean, lots of different things that he does. And I asked for two things: no elevation and no cold weather.
so he gave both
And
of them to you.
and he gave me both of them.
Yeah.
And in fact, he gave me both of them because I asked for neither of them. And he's like, and I said it to him after. I was like, this is bullshit. He was like, dude, you as soon as you said no elevation or cold, I knew exactly what we were doing, you
Yeah.
know? So
That is amazing.
yeah. But I was you know, we had talked about doing a hunting trip, which I've never done a hunting trip, and I'm super like into it. I it's a bucket list item for me. But when it came down to it, just a lot of the logistics and the timing when we were trying to get it done, getting the tag, all of that
Yeah.
didn't kind of come into fruition. But you know, I got to see that moose in front of me, and I was like, oh
Oh
my God,
man.
it was awesome.
Yeah, we'll have to get you out to Montana one of these days.
Yeah, for sure.
What he did was really interesting too, from the 48-hour concept. The mental toughness, resilience conversation connected to that. We've seen a lot of breakdowns when people don't know where the finish line is.
Yeah.
And so him adding that concept of you don't really know where you're going each day and you don't know where the finish of the actual event is. You see that all the time in special operations selection. It's the artificial finish, the fake finish. There is no finish. That is that extra layer outside of the physical of mental toughness that does break a lot of people down. And ironically, it is life too, where we just don't know when these things are going to finish. And just having that resilience to keep putting one foot in front of the other is awesome. It's awesome that he puts them together that way.
Yeah, and the beauty of it too was that, the last night it had poured, like I said, and so it started getting dark and we had several miles to go till we were closer to back to, I mean, we literally walked out his back door, and which was kind of wild. And then I'm like on the top of a mountain, 14 hours later. But the ground was soaking wet. And all I'm thinking is like, God, this is going to suck just being here another night. And we kind of sat down. We were opening up one of our dehydrated meals. We're drinking water from a lake that we had got it from a little while before. And he was like, all right, we have two options here. And he's like, it's going to be much colder than it was last night. He's like, so option number one is, and there was a fire ban, so we couldn't have any fire. And so he's like, option number one is, we, curl up for warmth and, we just try and get a few hours, just get to daylight. And he said, option number two is we keep going. He's like, if we keep going, the last set of miles that we have to get back are the most treacherous of the entire trip. And it's in the dark and it's wet. And we're going to be going down some like pretty good faces. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, the safest option is just to stay here, suck it up, not going to sleep, but just stay where we are. And I was like, we're going for it. I'm like, the idea of sitting in the cold scared me more than what the unknown that lied in front of me.
Yeah.
And it was a little gnarly. It was gnarly at points. And I was like, halfway through, I was like, oh, this was a bad decision. I'm going to break my ankle. But we got back and it was freaking awesome to, hike through the night and make it back. So, but yeah, I mean, again, for me, coming off of that trip, I felt such a sense of accomplishment and not 1 ounce of physical accomplishment. And it was a very physical challenge.
Yeah.
But I felt so much mental accomplishment. Like I felt, it was one of those things where I was like, I can freaking conquer the world. Like I did this,
Yeah.
and I had so much anticipation and fear. And that again is getting back to like a masogi. Like that's what it's about, It's like don't die. So, there were moments where I'm like, am I going to die right now? But at the end of the day, it was like the mental accomplishment of overcoming that was so huge.
Yeah. It's really interesting too, because you can even see it with your body language now, the look on your face, thinking back about that event and how amazing and exciting it was, but also it was very, very difficult. And our life is full of these really difficult things that become the most memorable. And we don't remember any of the easy things, any of the mundane things, any of the boring things. Like we can't even surface them to our memory from 10 or 15 years ago. But these very difficult mental challenges, these Masogi type expeditions, like we can think of every detail, recite every detail. We know how things smelt, how they felt, the weather, and it's because they were so hard that we have those kinds of memories. And so I always think about that in terms of us pursuing difficult, intentional challenges that's really going to create that memory bank of our life. And if we're not pursuing those, if we're not searching those out, there's not going to be many of them that happen, because you do have to manifest these things. You do have to, I think in today's society, probably more than ever before, you do have to artificially create some adversity for these masogis to happen. And if we
Totally.
and if we don't, we're probably missing out on some abundance that life has to offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that idea of like creating adversity in our life is huge. Like we cannot, we are, again, it's like Michael's book, like the
Hmm.
comfort crisis. Like we live such comfortable lives today, and they're so different from like the prehistoric ages,
Yeah.
where it was just the level of discomfort was how you lived. And we have such a responsibility right now to create uncomfortableness in our life in order to grow as individuals. And it's scary when you look at all of the luxuries. I think about just the everyday things that we do, ordering DoorDash. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about all these things that even growing up, it was like if we wanted takeout, like my dad had to drive at least and pick it up. He had to get in his car. Now it's like, oh, it's Friday night. You guys want Chick-fil-A? Sure. Ting, ting, ting. It'll be here in 20 minutes,
It's crazy.
And that's like scary in some
Hmm.
ways. It's actually super scary. I think more scary to the next generation because I think we have like a little bit of an understanding of how much easier it's gotten. But yeah, it's creating these uncomfortable environments and it's creating uncomfortable environments for kids too. I don't know if you have kids, but like I'm always trying to like create a little bit of uncomfortableness for them.
Yeah.
It can't always be so easy.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Mountain Tough is the fitness app trusted by the dedicated. Mountain Tough ethos is backed by, we've always wanted to be the best in the world at helping our customers become more mentally tough. So inside the Mountain Tough app, you're not only going to find all of our physical training programs, but you're going to find additional training as well so that you can stay sharp physically, mentally, spiritually, and nutritionally. The Mountain Tough app also allows you to train no matter where you are, anytime, anywhere. Additionally, the Mountain Tough app is going to have programs from beginners all the way up to elite athletes. And all of our programming is structured in a way that you can start with no gear at body weight, and you can go all the way up to programming that is full gear. So you can do that in a robust home gym or your local gym. There's no excuse for you not to start today. With Mountain Tough, you can conquer your goals with the ideal program for your lifestyle and schedule. Train with equipment or just your body weight on your phone, tablet, TV, or web browser. Most importantly, Mountain Tough will help you train your mindset so you are always ready for anything life throws your way. Mountain Tough is offering the Mountain Tough Podcast listeners an incredible offer. 6 weeks free on the Mountain Tough app. All you need to do is use the code MTNPOD to redeem your 6 weeks of training. That'll be a 14-day free trial plus a whole additional 4 weeks of training. Just go to mountaintough.com and enter code MTNPOD for your 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app. Have you found other things related to healing and related maybe to intentional goal setting? What are other things you've found that work for you that are not physical?
Um, that for to heal, you're
Yeah.
saying? What are
Yeah. for mental health?
I mean, I think for me, things that aren't physical, for me personally, like I have a deep love of being by the water. So I find healing in being by the ocean.
Mm,
It's something that is important to me that I grew up doing. And so I find a sense of calm when I'm by the ocean. Um, I always, you talk about there's no scarier place on this planet than an ocean.
oh man,
Um,
yeah, it's
and
powerful.
but there's nothing that creates a bigger sense of peace and calm than when you're standing next to an ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And so that for me is something that's big in my life. I used to be a big kind of journaler and writer, not so much anymore, just bandwidth wise, I probably should get back to that. Um, I this is more physical, but I've really gotten into the saunas, like the
Mm,
infrared sauna.
yeah.
I find a huge benefit in that for me. I do a little bit of the ice plunging, but it's 6 degrees here right now, so my tank is has about a foot of ice in it, so I'll wait till a little bit of warmer weather. I get the cold plunge as I walk out of my house.
Yeah.
Um, I get the cold therapy, no problem right now. I'm sure you're getting it too.
Yeah.
Um, and another thing for me that's big in my life is music. Um, is the role that music plays in my life. And so that's something for me that is super healing to me.
Yeah. What about vulnerability?
Um, I'm not as good as that, really. That's probably the place where I struggle the most. And again, it's like I can sit here with you and kind of I can share things about like the worst day of my life. I don't have trouble in this setting.
Mm,
I would have way more trouble sitting with somebody, with a friend, and them saying, like, really tell me how you're feeling. Like, how are you feeling right now? Let's talk about that.
yeah.
Like, that is so massively uncomfortable for me. Um, I don't know. I work on it. I don't open up very much about my feelings. I
Mm-hmm.
do still bottle a lot of stuff up. And I don't know. I'm a work in progress there. I'll put it that way. A
Yeah.
big work in progress.
We all are for sure. We're all work in progresses, and we all find these different tools that work for us, and some work better for others. And for me, I'm very similar to you, where for me, the Masogi type events have been a game changer in my life. Physical challenges that I can put on my calendar throughout the year. Um, the anything that mentally I need to stay in and not fall out of, or you'll kind of lose it. Like anytime you can find that flow state has been really helpful to me. I do find some of that like in the sauna and in the cold plunge where you you have to be present to make it 2 more minutes. You have to be present to make it 5 more minutes. Those things have been really, really helpful. But it's I think we're all a work in progress, and there's no complete mastery of mental health, which makes it fun. I mean, knowing that you can always get better, you can always improve. It's an endless pursuit for sure.
Yeah, and I think, there's also not like a one fit approach to mental health, right? What works for me may not work for you and vice versa. And I
Hmm.
think that's a little bit of it. Like you have to understand. And when I say kind of, I feel like I have better tools, like I know things that are going to help me. Now I can share them with you and you can try them and say, well, that didn't work for me. Versus there may be another modality that works for you, that I'm like, yeah, I tried that. It didn't really cut it for me. And so I think that's really hard when you start to really take if you're dealing with mental health challenges, like it's not just like, okay, do this. If you cut yourself, you go to, you cut yourself open, you go, you get stitches. Everybody's going to get the same treatment
Yeah.
on the big cut in their arm.
Mm.
Not everybody's going to get the same treatment for anxiety or depression, right? Um, and so that's why it makes things a little bit harder when I think, dealing and treating mental health is harder, because there isn't just the magic pill that you can take and it's going to work for everyone. So,
Yeah, very individualized for sure.
yeah.
Well, Ryan, thank you. I do want to be respectful of your time. We are out of time. I love, listening to your story and your tools, and that hard way challenge was amazing. I got to look that guy up and see if I can
Oh yeah.
connect with him.
He's quite a character. You will love him, and yeah, happy to make the introduction for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And thanks for all the people you're helping as well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. What a phenomenal conversation with Ryan Manion. Remember, every episode we are looking for that golden nugget. What can we take away from today's episode and apply to our lives? That practical approach that leads to transformation. She shared a lot of phenomenal stats, statistics, and helpful practices when it comes to anxiety, depression, your mindset. Lots to unpack there. But my favorite part was the misogi part, because we talk a lot about that at Mountain Tough, and I do encourage everyone to take part in something like that. So super simple. A misogi is something that's outside of your comfort zone. There's a 50% chance you might die. She joked about that on today's show. Michael Easter talks about the same thing, but it is signing up for something that is difficult for you, getting someone to push you outside of that comfort zone. Maybe it's a Spartan, maybe it's a Spartan Ultra, maybe it's a High Rocks, maybe it's a ultra marathon, a 50K, a 100 miler. Maybe it is that big Alaska hunt that you've been nervous to sign up for. Maybe it is that big Western hunt that you've just been scared of the elevation, the altitude. It's these kinds of things outside of our comfort zone that are going to make us a better human. And that's an easy way to become a better human, by doing something that's fun, exhilarating. You can incorporate your family. You can do it in a lot of different ways. So I love that golden nugget. See how you can apply that in your life in 2025. Love you guys. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next episode.